might be appropriate at this stage to go straight on to report number 23, which is the Water Management Zone Committee update, and would like to invite our young people to remain and hear how their contribution is reflected in the work of the zone committees. And I imagine that would have been music to your ears.
Certainly is. So our chair from Christchurch West Melton, Arapata Reuben, apologises, as Ellen Lim from Selwyn Waihora, but we have Pam Richardson, the acting chair of Banks Peninsula. So maybe I can just start following on from the children. I'm Leslie Woodberg, by the way. I'm the zone facilitator for Christchurch West Melton and Banks Peninsula zone committees. So I'll start with Christchurch West Melton and then we'll just move along the table. Once again, the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee is incredibly privileged to be involved with the work that the EOS Ecology and the kids have been involved in the Waka Inaka project. There's been a lot of community engagement on that, and one of the really exciting findings from that project is the fact that we found that reach of the Heathcote River from basically the tannery up to the Opawa Bridge is potentially one of the longest known spawning sites for whitebait in the South Island. So that's a pretty special resource that we've got there to make the most of. We'd like to, certainly the Zone Committee would like to acknowledge the trial that the Christchurch City is undertaking in terms of not mowing those riverbanks. So we'll be keen to see how that goes, and certainly working with the community to let people know why the council is not mowing those riverbanks, which I think is very important.
Have we put any signs up? I'm sorry for interrupting, but have we actually put signs up along the riverbanks, you know, like every now and again, just to say this is why?
I'll ask maybe two of our your council officers sitting behind me, Keith Davidson and Greg Burrell. I was
going to say, if we haven't, we could ask the kids to design them for us.
Who have been involved in that trial.
That sounds lovely. We've been considering how we can educate the public on this trial. It is just a trial because we do need to test public acceptability. When I kind of questioned, said why do we scalp these riverbanks? Why have we done it for so many years? It's because it looks neat, it looks tidy, and we do it because we've always done it. And really, I think we need to challenge those assumptions and change that. And part of that is certainly education. So we're working with our communications team to find a way to get the message out there, and we'll be looking for public feedback on just how acceptable they do find these banks with the longer grass.
Yeah. But we haven't got any signs up there?
We haven't put signs up as such. We're hoping to get the message out through social media and other outlets, but we haven't closed the door on that possibility as yet.
And you haven't closed the door on potential designers?
Not at all.
It's Tim. Oh, no, sorry, I've interrupted, and which was naughty of me. It might be better if we... Do you want to take questions at the end?
Well, certainly just for a second, the benefits are obviously even to our children in terms of the inanga spawning, but there's other benefits too. We expect that we'll be able to reduce erosion by allowing the grass to grow longer and the root systems to take hold better. This has been a problem particularly since the earthquakes of erosion, and we're having to deal with that, so it should help. We're hoping that we'll see other improvements in the riparian habitat in terms of other ecological benefits and other species take advantage of that. Long grass also has the opportunity to filter contaminants. All the runoff that you get that goes straight down the banks into the river, longer grass should actually help to retain some of that and improve water quality. And of course, when grass is cut, doesn't matter how hard you try, some of that's going to end up in the river, and again that decays, and that has affects water quality. And of course it'll be interesting to see, because obviously with shaved riverbanks, that's an ideal habitat for ducks and geese, and so it might just be interesting to see as part of the trial as to whether that affects their behaviour and their numbers, because obviously they're a significant impact upon the water quality too. So we're hoping to see a number of benefits, but obviously we're mindful of the concerns and other considerations, which is why we're running it as a trial.
Right. So, are you happy to carry on, or?
I'm happy.
Yep.
We're in your hands.
Okay, all right.
So, just keeping on the Heskett catchment, the Zone Committee also approved 86,000 in ecosystem health biodiversity projects at their last meeting. 3 of those are in the upper Heskett catchment, so we are really trying to focus quite a bit of attention at the moment, particularly on the Heskett catchment. As well as that, I think the Zone Committee would really like to commend the work of the stormwater engineers, and particularly trying to tackle the worst 2 tributaries of the Heskett, and that's at Kirtlett's Road and Hayton Stream. So there's quite a bit of work going with engineering on those 2 areas. A lot of the heavy metals, specifically affected by the more industrialised catchment there, and particularly heavy transport links. So the other aspect, I suppose, that I'd like to just mention is work that we've been doing with the University of Canterbury around a model for modelling some of the contaminants off these more urban catchments called Medusa, and we had a very interesting presentation on the Addington Brook about how much zinc's coming off roofs, how much copper, how much sediment, and hopefully we'll be able to take that work into thinking about what are the best management approaches. So if you swept a car park twice in a week, would that have a significant effect rather than once a week, or things like that? So quantifying those effects. So that's really kind of Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee. If anybody has any questions, or
well, Tim had his hand up before.
Just kind of really follow on from you, Keith. My understanding was that introduced waterfowl don't like the long natural kind of riverbanks, whereas the native waterfowl actually like those. Is that because the waterfowl is a problem with our rivers? Is it?
Greg, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so Greg Burrell, I'm a freshwater ecologist. I know more about fish than I do about ducks, so I'll be quite honest about that. But that's my understanding too. But I would defer to a bird person. But the dogma is that if we can get the right sort of vegetation in, we can get the right sort of species there. So yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Phil, Sarah, Aaron.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify with Keith about the possibilities, starting with the issue of the worst areas like Kirtlett's Road Stream and Hayton Stream, about the possibilities of future wetland there, or some kind of swale to assist the contamination problem. Is that a possibility, Keith?
I probably can't comment in detail on that. The staff are working very hard to identify all opportunities to find options for water quality improvement and treatment. My understanding is that a number of options will be coming forward through the local plan process. They're working very hard to respond to this, but I can't just offhand comment on those particular.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I'm just going to follow up on the Whaka Inaka project as well. We had a presentation to the Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board on the 14th of November. Kirsty Brennan came along, which was excellent. And actually at that point, and it's in the minutes, Community Board minutes that are in our agenda today, the board requested that staff work with EOS Ecology in developing an operational and communication plan to support the project. And one of the things that the board talked about actually was the signage. The signage for the hay bales had been really good, and actually having some similar formats so that when people are actually walking their dogs or walking along the riverbank, rather than online just with social media. That they see the signs and they get knowledge there rather than having the disconnect at home on the computer to walking out. And so we were quite keen for some sort of signage, and having the kids involved would be really good, getting them to design them and just putting them up on those same sort of waratahs and stuff would be excellent.
Aaron?
Yeah, actually a nice wee segue from Sarah's point around the dogs, because we have this problem up around the sticks as well, is dogs soiling around the waterways, and of course people, when there's no one watching, will often just walk away and leave it, or the dogs in and out the waterway, especially around these spawning grounds. Would it be helpful if we had a dogs on leash policy around our waterways? Like, what sort of difference would that make, or is it just pointless?
I honestly don't know. I'm a dog owner and, and a dog walker and an ecologist.
So do you cringe when your dog runs through a nesting area of whitebait?
To be fair, my dog doesn't do that because I don't take it down there. And I think that's about education. And so I'm really keen on the idea of education. I know internally there's some initiatives around that. I think this concept of the love zone, I like that, and I think there's an issue about disengagement with our natural environment. If we can get people more engaged with the natural environment, and these young people here are showing that, and I think the general public could do with a bit more engagement too. So I think education rather than just a straight sort of punitive step.
Well, it's not punitive, it's just dogs on leads. You're not saying you can't take your dog there, just don't let it run through the love zone.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're talking about whitebait spawning areas, I can see advantages. I don't know if there's going to be a difference in terms of defecating on lead or off lead. The main thing, people have a responsibility for picking up after their dogs regardless.
They do. Harder to ignore it when the dog's right beside you on a lead. Then if it's run down the bank and you kind of look the other way, just
would certainly be an option.
Seen it.
Yanni, then David.
Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's obviously really great to see the children not just doing the education but also doing the science as well. And so I just wondered if you've thought of any other projects involving children around water quality that could be done. I appreciate the whitebait. There's a very discreet project. But are there others that you've thought about in terms of sediments or water quality or monitoring?
Certainly, once again, EOS Ecology has led the way in this, and they've given 6 kits out to all the schools in Banks Peninsula for water quality and also invertebrate monitoring. So there's microscopes and all sorts of bits and pieces in their kits in terms of Banks Peninsula, but we haven't looked in terms of Christchurch City so much. But Greg, you're the
full of ideas. Well, it's really exciting, and the obvious thing that people say or ask when they hear about this not mowing the lawn, they say, "Well, why don't you just plant it up?" And of course, that's part of the long-term vision, is to be able to identify areas where we can do that, acknowledging that there are multiple uses, both aesthetic and landscape, as well as drainage. But I think that going through this process, letting the grass grow long, it's a really good test of some, I guess, ingrained culture and ideas, and hopefully in the next the next 12 months, as we start to get more information, we can look towards plantings, and that would be a great opportunity, I think, for schools to get involved, because it's the logical next step. So, I think that would be a really nice thing to do. There are a range of other waterway initiatives that schools get involved with. I just think this would be a nice segue for some of the schools who've been involved.
I think it's also good for education,
Absolutely.
Because, if we want parents to understand that washing their car on the street ain't a good idea, then who better to tell them than the kids?
Yes. And on that note, there has actually been a suggestion for some biodiversity funding for looking at a community car washing area.
Yes.
That people can
take their car and clean it. Yeah. No, that's a very good idea.
Around that.
David.
Thanks. Yeah, great presentation from some of the kids here, and I have an interest with the Waitakere kids and their presentation of the love area for the Avon. Just a couple of comments I'd like to make, I think, in support of what they were saying. One, that there is already some signage there for spawning sites around the Avondale Bridge, but I wouldn't say it's particularly effective. I've seen it over the years, but the one thing that concerns me a little bit, I think, and whilst I'm extremely supportive of protecting the spawning sites and in that particular area and letting the grass grow longer to do so is great, but I think we need to take the suggestion that the children brought up about having a keep your river clean program, and I believe during that spawning season it would have to be sort of at least monthly or more, because one of the issues that does raise its head in the lower reaches of the Avon is when we have lengthy vegetation, or whether it be it grass or other species along the riverbed, they do trap all the rubbish that flows down the river. So I think we need, alongside this program, a program of keeping the litter out of the river, because it does get damned unsightly when we allow the grass to grow longer for spawning and we allow the vegetation to grow bigger, that we have these traps for large amounts of rubbish. So very supportive of what's been presented today, but I would encourage that we look very strongly at either a rubbish prevention collection program or some means of actually keeping the rubbish out of the river before we have a problem.
Dion?
Thank you everybody for the presentation, it was really good. Very quickly, we've got the big residential red zone or area, or the green zone in the city at the moment, and we're having a good conversation about water quality and things like that and looking forward into the future. Can somebody actually just talk to us about what maybe the impact of that residential red zone has been on the water quality potentially now, and what maybe we can look at in the future that actually would actually support these objectives moving forward into the future?
That's probably a question that would take more time, but Greg and the City Council do the water quality testing. I don't know if you're quite going to respond to that.
I'm a little unsure about exactly what you mean by sort of the change. Are you talking about your reduced number of people around stormwater quality, or?
Yeah, so obviously you've got a whole lot of less houses, less built environment there, and you've probably got more runoff edges, so you've got a bit more green space, or that green belt. I'm just wondering if there's been a noticeable change that you've noticed there, or could there be more to be done?
My recollection from the most recent round of water quality reporting is that it didn't detect that there wasn't a change, but that was largely looking at sort of year on year. So I'd have to get back to you about the, if you like, before quake or before, I guess, people leaving versus after. I agree, it's an interesting question, and one would think that you might expect some changes. Yep, well, we can have a look at that data.
Just remember, we're here discussing the Water Management Committee, and we've got 2 more to go. Right. So Mike and then Vicky.
Sorry, I'll make it very quick. We heard a bit about the Canadian geese and ducks, and I do a lot of walking around the city and I've seen, sort of, for me visually, quite a lot of Canadian geese. Are those numbers exploding, getting worse, or?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that the numbers are managed, but beyond that, I don't know.
Do they need to be managed more?
Yes, yes they do, 100%. Yeah. Nothing against Canadians per se, but the geese can go.
But the Tiwai Water Co-Governance Committee's looking at that too.
Te Waihoa is where they sort of tend to come under particular focus because of the lake. Anyway, Vicky. Thank you. I'm not sure, and I just want to clarify whether this is you guys or us, and that's the suggestion of the Adopt a Riverbank concept that came up through the schools. Is that a happening thing, or is it something we need to make happen?
I'll talk to the... I think it's probably a combination.
So how best would we make that happen?
Yes.
So how best would we make that happen?
I can certainly take that idea back to the zone committee and the community boards that are involved in those catchments. I think it will be a combination between the zone committees and the community boards to drive it.
Would you like to, next time you come back, make suggestions to us on how we could make that happen? Sure. Not just for schools, but for other groups, individuals, or anyone?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I think it's probably time that we moved on to Banks Peninsula, so Pam.
I've got my gumboots on today, we have got some good news about the Banks Peninsula water zone, and that is in that Lake Wairera has, its signs have been taken down, its pollution signs have been taken down as of the last couple of weeks. So the pollution is not as bad as what it was over the winter months and over the last summer, so there has been improvement. But why the improvement, who knows? So it's a lake that's not known a lot about, and in the last Akaroa Mail you'll see there was an article in there from Shane Waters, who came to speak to the zone about the lake and how difficult and challenging it will be to get any good outcomes from that lake. And it will be a long-term project if we ever resolve it. So, but there are a lot of things that the Zone Committee is doing with its local communities at Little River to resolve it. The next bit there that we talk about in our report is the Cairns Bay Community Water Supply, and of course you all should know about that I was actually at a meeting yesterday at an annual plan pre-meeting that we talked about it. The Zone Committee is very supportive of it, and as you can see, though, we have been working, a small working group has been working with the District Health Board, Runanga, and etc. to look at that community water supply. So the Zone Committee really has got in behind this and looked at how might they move it along. So there are a number of other things that the Zone Committee, it's all about communities working with the City Council and Environment Canterbury, and that's what happens with these Zone Committees. They're wonderful opportunities to work together, and that's what zones should be doing, is overseeing a whole lot of projects that are going on. But in Littleton Harbour, we've got the Whakaraupo Littleton Harbour Basin, and there's a catchment plan project going on there. Members of the Zone Committee are working on that at the moment. We also have got City Council working very, very strongly in our community about the disposal of wastewater to land in the Akaroa catchment. Very controversial project, and we just need to applaud the work that the City Council staff are doing in our communities, and the support from those councillors that are coming along to those meetings. And as you can see there at the bottom, Elizabeth Cunningham is our representative to Banks Peninsula Zone Committee, where we have 4 Runanga that we work alongside, so we value as well having Elizabeth there. So we've just spent recently in Banks Peninsula, or allocated $103,000 to 5 community projects, mostly in the Kokorarata area, that's the Little River, Wairera area and Wainui area, and over the hill there was one over the hill in the Akaroa catchment as well. So we've spent over $306,000 in the last few years on biodiversity projects. So they are welcome opportunities of all working together. And I just happened to look at my computer this morning and said, is New Zealand's whitebait population fried? So it is the end of the whitebait season. Some have caught more than others. But it's quite appropriate that you've actually got the whitebait being talked about here this morning. So when it's fried, it's been in the frying pan, or it's fried by the environment. So onwards and upwards.
Very good. So, Phil?
Just a quick question, especially with Pam, with you being on a community board, I'm just wondering, but like some really neat ideas have been presented to us today, and it's great that the Zone Committee are talking to Council. I'm sure this, and I see some community board members behind you, it's about scope for linking in or community boards around some of the suggestions that have been made today. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, I found it very valuable being a member of a community board and a member of a zone committee. Very beneficial because I can take one thing from one thing to another. So, and this means that there's fusion of all sorts of ideas and things. So it is very important that I think it's very important that we actually do have a community board person on there as well. We do have a council representative, and our council representative on our zone committee bends over backwards to be with us. But there's a huge amount of sharing information. So yes, there is. It is a good opportunity to have a community board representative on it as well.
So, so on.
Last but no means least.
Yes, no, definitely.
I'm Ian Whitehouse. I'm the facilitator for that zone. The Selwyn Waihoura Zone Committee has, I guess, as its goal to get the Selwyn River swimmable at Coes Ford. So it's swimmable at Chamberlain's Ford, which is only a handful of kilometres above Coes. And I think that Anne Galloway will attest the challenge when we took the zone committee there at a field trip on Tuesday. There's only a quarter of the flow in the river that there was at the same time last year. Really? I mean, the real challenge of 3 dry winters that haven't filled up the groundwater bathtub really shows up in not only the lowland streams but also in the lower Selwyn. So that's the challenge in the zone committee, I guess, is up for a leadership role and to try and to work with a huge number of organisations, schools, agencies that are already trying to do stuff in terms of make it better. The other comment that I did want to make, and I know that Alan Lim would have made it as the chair if he was here. Zone Committee, I guess, would also like to, acknowledge the importance of Te Waihora co-governors in really seriously trying to bring Te Waihora Lake Ellesmere back to what it was. And so I guess the Zone Committee is there and would like to support and help in any way it can in terms of the Te Waihora co-governors, of which the council is one of.
Thank you, Owen. I just have such happy childhood memories of swimming at Coes Ford. It's just, yeah, would be a dream come true, that. Is there any questions? Andrew.
Thank you. I'm just interested in a little bit more information on the last sentence that we've got in the report in front of us today. The microbial contamination at Coes Ford comes from Silver Stream, which joins the river about 200 metres above Coes Ford. Certainly your aim for Coes Ford, for the Selwyn River at Coes Ford to be swimmable is great, and I think it's fair to say we would totally support that. What's the activity that's happening at Silver Stream or further up the catchment, which could be, or that you may know is causing that contamination?
So a piece of context. So Silver Stream itself's got 3 or 4 main channels. 90% of the lengths of those channels stock are excluded from. Yet we still don't see the drop off in, I guess, the peak E. coli levels, which generally are flushed down after rain, often in autumn or early summer. We do know that within and flowing into Silver Stream is a number of, I guess, what the farmers would call drains. And so we need to work on the drains and get both stock excluded from them pretty much all the time, but also stop any excess of water into those drains, particularly in high flow events. So that's going to be one of the key pieces of focus is around stock exclusion.
Thank you. Very good. Look, thank you very much for your time and effort. I'm just getting this resolution updated so that we receive the information in the 3 Water Management Zone Committees reports, and I think it's going to be our intention to invite the zone committees to come direct to council on a bi-monthly basis, because I think that this level of exposure on these issues is going to be really helpful in terms of public building public understanding and knowledge about what they can do to contribute to the quality of our waterways. So thank you very much for what you do. But I also want an instruction for me to write to Waitakere School and Apawa School and EOS Ecology for the work that they are doing, to thank them for their presentation here today, but really encourage them to continue in these efforts, because I really do think that their presentations were outstanding and their work was outstanding as well.
I just thought there's a number of other schools in Lewis that could we just extend that to those schools as well for the work?
Yeah, I could write to all of the schools in the list. I've got the full list, but I'd particularly like to thank them for their presentation, and then EOS Ecology and the other schools to thank them for the ongoing work, if that's okay. So would you like to move that, Yanni?
I would like to thank the young people for coming and the effort that you've made. And I'm just wondering, is there any way that we can use the fantastic information you've given us in the public to educate the public? Is there any way that council staff can take what they've presented and use it in some way for the general public?
Well, we filmed the whole thing and took photographs, so I'm hoping that Newsline will run a full story on it as well. But I think the fact that they've come here to the council has provided an opportunity for one to be live streamed, but the media are all here, and I'm sure they're just as fascinated by the commitment of young people as they are by others who made presentations. So that the Mayor write to Waitakere School, EOS Ecology, and the other schools. Yeah, that's kind of missing the point, isn't it?
For their presentation and for their and other schools' ongoing hard work.
Yeah, but I want to write to the other schools that are listed. So anyway, look, can we just? Yeah, I'll just do the right thing. That'll do. So I've got Yanni moving it, and Anne seconding it. Right. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, and we'll adjourn now for a very late morning tea. There's no morning tea. Sorry, there's no morning tea. We won't adjourn unless you want to go and get a cup of coffee for 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Okay, back here at 11:30.